Yes, today we are going to present about economic factors affecting development. So there are different factors which includes poverty, credit, capital, and aid. And I'm going to talk more about poverty. So this is the UND. This is what UNDP defines as poverty. When someone is denied of choices, dignity, and human rights, and when there is a lack of basic capacity to participate effectively in a society, and when they're deprived of basic needs. However, the World Bank says that the poverty rate right now is around, this was as per 2017, but right now the poverty rate is around 8.6 currently. And this is measured based on the poverty line, which is 1.25 USD. So, what if I say this rate of poverty is inaccurate if you take into consideration the UNDP metrics? Because so there was a bunch. Next. So there was a bunch of researchers who actually went to the poverty, the countries with poverty, and what they found out was the poverty line, what like the dollar, the USD thing does not really reflect the actual poverty condition, because you like the poverty is not just about having money or no money. It's more about the dignity, the human rights and stuff. So for example, if you take the case of India, we have caste system. So let's say there is a family above poverty, but they're not allowed to access common resources because they're from a certain caste. So this way they're deprived of human dignity, even though they have higher, even though they may be above the poverty line. So that's why poverty, international poverty line was criticized for not being the accurate depiction of actual poverty, and it was decided by a bunch of economists in United States. So like no one from the actual people who are actually suffering poverty were not involved in the choosing of the poverty line. So that's why they introduced multi-dimensional poverty index. So this includes lot of factors, including health, education, and living standards. So for example, if you take the case of India, the poverty line as per the so the poverty rate as per the poverty line is 10.2%. However, if you take the other factors into consideration, the poverty rate is much higher. It's like twice the rate of what World Bank says. It's around 25.01%. So which means like nearly one in every 4 person in India is suffering from poverty if we consider every factors. And the speciality of this MPI is that it does not give equal weightage to everything. So it has different parts, and different parts have unequal weightage based on. So this is more well researched, and it's chosen based on how much impact does these dimensions have on a actual in an actual scenario. So basically, poverty line is used for sustainable development goals and most of the United Nations goals. However, MPI is also recognized by UNDP, but it's not widely used. However, there are some countries which have been using multidimensional poverty, which includes Colombia, Mexico, Chile, Philippines, and Nigeria. So when it comes to MPI differs for each country, and MPI is being measured by the country itself. For example, in case of India, MPI is measured through Niti Aayog. So it's basically a development program in India. Next. So yeah, here's so this is basically the poverty trap. So yeah, poverty trap or the poverty cycle. So what is poverty cycle? In simple words, poverty cycle is basically poverty leads to more poverty. So there are different factors that pushes country into this poverty cycle. One of them is civil war. So we have Sudan, DRC, and Rwanda. So Rwanda can be a successful case study where they have recovered from the poverty trap due to other development by developing in other factors, which includes gender equality as well. And also subsidies from rich countries make poor countries products less cheaper. So So, for example, rich countries usually subsidize the goods that they sell, so that way their products are cheaper, while the products from poor countries might be higher. So, the demand for the products from poor countries will be less. Therefore, their development would be impacted, and rich country race to the bottom. So, basically, when rich countries look for resources, they basically look for where they can get the cheapest labor, where they can get the cheapest resources. So this basically pushes poor countries to sell for less. So that is one of the reasons why they are in the constant cycle, because there is no way that they could develop, because they are given with less money. And also indebtedness is one of the, like as you saw in the cartoon before. So indebtedness has like the highest impact on poverty trap, because when countries take loan, and thus there will be interest rate on the loan, and which they won't be able to repay, and then they have to take another loan, and which they just put into this constant cycle of poverty. And there are like 14 countries in Africa which have taken which are at the high risk of indebtedness, and they are in the highest level of budget deficit. And then we have MNC tax havens. So basically, we have seen a lot of case studies like multinational companies in Bangladesh, multinational companies in Ivory Coast who extract natural resources. So as they extract natural resources, they do not usually pay taxes to the government. So the tax haven is basically companies accumulating their wealth not in the country but outside the host country, so they can save taxes. And since poor countries usually have more corruption and higher levels of lower levels of government moderation, it's easier for MNCs to look for tax havens. So that way, they're again in this poverty cycle. They do not get income due to less income. There'll be low saving, low investment, low economic growth, which has an impact on development. Therefore, since there is low income, there will be low levels of education. So it affects other forms of development as well. So, what are the causes of poverty? What causes poverty? So, as we saw, inequality is one of the reasons. Uh, as we like, just like as we saw in the poverty cycle, and conflict like war zone. So, war in Syria has led to like 70% increase in poverty. So that's like one of the case studies. Then we have human malnutrition and stunting. So, for example, in case of Ethiopia, the GDP was lost by 16% just due to stunting. So basically, stunting is when children do not mature properly. And then we have poor healthcare system. So lack of maternal care will lead to more health problems, high mortality rates, which will again impact the productivity of the economy, affecting the economic growth. I mean, all this can be linked back to the poverty cycle again. And then we have access to clean water hygiene. This is basically deprived of basic necessities. Then we have climate change. So basically, we have something called no global north versus global south. So global north are countries which are developed, and global south are the countries which are underdeveloped or developing. So usually developed countries extract resources from the developing countries, and to fuel their consumerism. So for example, United States consumes around 4 Earths as per their ecological footprint. So which means they are consuming more than what Earth has. So which is something compromised by the global south. And when climate change happens, the highest impact is on equatorial zone. So, and the most of the natural resources, they occur in the equatorial zone, which is where most of the developing countries lay. And when natural calamities happen, developed countries are more equipped to handle them, while developing countries won't be handle them, leading to a higher impact on their growth. So that's like this kind of links to climate justice, which is like a bigger concept. Then we have lack of education. So nearly 171 million people will be out of poverty if they had basic literacy rate. That shows how important education is in terms of moving people out of poverty. Then infrastructure, as we talked about before, whenever a natural disaster happens, if a country is developed enough, they'll be able to handle, they'll be able to ensure that the disaster doesn't have much impact on their economy. Then we have a health crisis, especially the best case study is COVID, when most of the countries were pushed into poverty.